your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Welcome to a Bridge City News special report on Indigenous land rights. There has been no end of discussion on this issue since last August when the BC Supreme Court recognized Aboriginal title for the Cowichan Nation over 7.5 square kilometers of land in Richmond, British Columbia, specifically the historic site of Tucktinus. And since then, Ottawa has also signed an agreement with the Musqueam Indian Band and formally recognizes the band's Aboriginal title and rights within their traditional territory, which includes most of Metro Vancouver, as well as the lower Fraser River and surrounding waterways. Before we get into the legalities of that, we want to talk about the land from an Indigenous perspective. Dale Swampy is a member of the Samson Cree First Nation in Musqueam, Alberta. He is a graduate of the University of Alberta with a degree in economics. He is also with the National Coalition of Chiefs. Dale, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Jeanette. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so Dale, I want to start with the Indigenous perspective of the land. We think of land as something we own, and ownership, we believe, is everything. So First Nations maybe view that differently. So how would you explain it?
We talk about the in education when we grow up about how democracy and human rights come into place and created the kind of prosperity that we enjoy as Canadians and around the world and in these democracies. And it's all about what started in the Glorious Revolution in the 1600s in England, when fee simple land or property rights were given to individual people rather than lords and people with status. So each individual in the system had the ability to be able to own land, and that never existed before, right? So I think that's what's created the difference between First Nations and the rest of the Canadians who have immigrated here, immigrating with the idea that as Canadians they all have equal rights and so forth. But when Canada first signed the treaties and when BC entered Confederation without any treaties for First Nations, every First Nation community, I think, thought that we were going to share the land. And treaties actually assigned reserves, land to First Nations, and they did the same thing with non-treaty lands and or non-treaty First Nations in BC. And the problem that we have is the agreement that we got for these lands has been, abused by the federal government representatives. And the Cowichan case, for example, is pretty blatant. The Indian agent signed over the land to himself in order to expedite a gathering of people, settlers who wanted to utilize the land for different purposes. And there was a disregard on behalf of the Indian agents, the federal government, and so forth. I think in some cases they were under the impression that the Indian people would, become part of Canada and the reserves would no longer exist. I think that's why they separated us so much into these postage stamp type communities across the country, so we couldn't unite and create the kind of influence that you have in the United States with big, large reserves and so forth for one tribe. And it hurts our people. I mean, we're isolated. We didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't have the hunting facilities, fishing access, and so forth. So we suffered. We became, impoverished and starving. And next thing you know, they're taking away our kids because we couldn't feed them and putting them into residential homes. And that got carried away. Next thing you know, they're trying to build infrastructure and so forth. Like Tsuut'ina getting his land taken away for a reservoir and dam and power, and Siksika, getting a dam on their land and flooding their whole community because the Indian agents didn't have any respect for First Nation people, and neither did the rest of Canada. And it exists today to a certain extent. I mean, most people have never set foot on an Indian reservation because they're scared to. They don't know the struggle that we went through. If all the Canadians knew the struggles that we go through, we wouldn't have the kind of separation between the First Nations and Canadian society. We'd be part of society, but it's difficult. It's difficult for both a regular Canadian growing up, not knowing what the communities are about. People are notorious for pushing away things they don't know about because they can't deal with it. But we got to, pull up our socks and start thinking about our own backyard and get Canadians to understand where we come from and why we're doing these sort of things.
So to bridge that gap a little, help us understand the Aboriginal connection to the land. Is it spiritual, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, and if you understood where First Nations come from, you understand that we pray to the Creator. We pray to the Creator who protects us allows us to be able to get the resources and the nutrients we need from the land. Land is the most important thing we have. Elders always talk about the fact that we've got to respect and keep our land. We can't sell it, because it's for future generations, and that's what Canadians and most people in the world don't understand is the fact that we're a communal group, society, and we take care of our people for generations, and we're not going to leave. We're tied to the land, and we're gonna live on the land. We're gonna keep it, and in terms of generation from generation, and that's goes against government thoughts originally. The fact that we would assimilate in Canadian society into Canadian society, and that reserve life or reserve land would no longer exist. So it's important to us. It's vital. If we get a chance to be able to get additional land for our reserves, we'll take it, no matter what, the cost or price, because it's important. And transferring that land into reserve status is also important, so that nothing's held by any one individual, that it's held by the community.
So is that part of the clash that we're seeing right now, a collision of simple individual property rights and group property rights?
I don't think First Nations, and I can't speak for Cowichan or Musqueam or anybody in this regard, and I'm not a lawyer, but all I can say is I don't think leadership have ever made, a move like this intentionally to take away Canadians' right to personal property. I think it's all about an agreement, sticking to an agreement that they made, and getting the land back that the government agreed to give to them. And I think that's important. The National Coalition of Chiefs was formed on the basis of uniting First Nations together to speak as more clearly and more influentially as a group rather than individual First Nations. And I think as a group, First Nations, want to get their land back that they were promised at treaty. They want to be able to get it, justifiably, because it goes through the courts and so forth. But it's not their intention to, override any constitutional law about First Nations access and rights to lands. It's about, getting what they agreed to at a treaty. And if you didn't have a treaty, you were assigned lands, and you were promised to, I imagine, to get some sort of treaty agreement together. We argued as an intervener against laws like UNDRIP and UNDRIPA because of not because it gave us too much rights, but because there was so much ambiguity in that law. The right of UNDRIP and the legislation it can be interpreted by Supreme Court justices to empower them over any other law in the Constitution, and I don't think that's the intention of UNDRIPA. I don't think it's the intention of First Nations. I mean, we want to live with fellow Canadians harmoniously, and all we want is what was promised us, a treaty.
Dale, thanks so much for making time for us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Coming up next in our Bridge City News special report on Indigenous land rights, our Rod Kurtz sits down for a fascinating conversation with Queen's University law professor Bruce Purdy. They will look at some of the legal confusion that surrounds some of these Aboriginal land claims. So stay with us.